Hello, everybody. Scott Golden here, Pro Wrestling Logic YouTube channel, and we are here to do a review of the June 3rd AEW Dynamite program, and it should be a relatively fun review. If you're new here, like, subscribe, comment below. Just a small channel update in general. We're crossing into our third month. I'm just basically rounding it off to the first because I don't remember the day I opened the channel, but we're going to round it off to the first of every month. So we're in month 3, and in the first 2 months, we've got over 22,000 views of content on the channel, which is phenomenal to me. That's bigger than an arena. Many arenas, more than 22,000 people, but still an arena size viewership, and I thank you for all of that. Would love to see us get up to 35,000 in June. So make that happen. Like, subscribe, comment below. And we're going to add some really cool content. We're going to finish our TNT series this month, Saturday Night's Main Event series. And if there's a series you'd like to hear, please feel free to comment below. But we're going to continue with our AEW Dynamite review. Also upcoming Dark, which was last night. Impact Wrestling. They got me doing the TNA thing now. And also NXT, among other things. But anyway, we're going to open the program here. And that begins with, I'll just open my notes. I hope if I open the right notes. We open with a Black Lives Matter video. I won't go into this in great detail because this isn't a political channel. I understand why they do it. I respect what they're trying to do. Let's hope that what they're trying to do ends with something coming from it, even if it's just donations to the cause of making sure that people treat each other nicer. I'll end there because I don't want to get any more political than that. So anyway, we move on to the wrestling part of our program. Video recap of the show from last week is up next, and the announcers speak about the momentum they have coming off of the Mike Tyson appearance last week. We open with the Tag Team Championship contest, and that is a contest that's been a while in coming because this is the first time back on Dynamite in a while for one half of the Tag Team Champions, Hangman Page, and they face off against Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc with Penelope Ford, and they retain their championships. From what I've read across social media and everything, some people said this was a good opener. I will admit I'm biased. I don't particularly care for Sabian and Havoc, so I'm harder on them than I would be on other teams. I also have a fundamental issue with the idea that the champions, who you've got, what, 4 champions now across AEW: tag, women's, heavyweight, and the TNT championship. So you got 4 champions. And unless someone's moving up the card, they shouldn't look competitive with the champions right off. That doesn't make sense to my brain, never has, right? Like, if we go back to the 80s, because that's where I started, or even earlier decades than the 80s, or even the early 90s, if we go back and we say we put a enhancement match in the ring and we say the Conquistadors against Demolition, the Conquistadors aren't going to look competitive because at the end of the day, it's there to get the champions over and the championships over. Now, I know there's 2 schools of thought. There's the school of thought that says the championship is just a prop. It's just there to augment a few talents to get them more over. I come from another line of thought. If your championship is the most valuable thing, or your championships, plural, are the most valuable thing in the company, then if somebody leaves unexpectedly, you might have lost a person, but you didn't lose the value. So when you take a team like Havoc and Sabian, who maybe they're good in 3 months, 6 months, but they just started teaming, less than a month or 2 ago? And you put them in a championship match like this, what you've basically said is, any two guys can come together, win a few matches, and get a championship shot. And I don't get that logic. I've never understood that logic with booking. Um, Now there are those that would argue, well, it's just you got to fill time on TV. Well, if you're that hard up for booking matches that make logical sense, then it's time to go back to the drawing board. Every match, especially championship matches more than any, should have a purpose and a why. And I can't fathom a purpose and a why that couldn't have waited a month or two for Havoc and Sabian to get this opportunity. Um, Obviously not having a crowd hurt the match too. Um, Omega and Havoc start off, and there's a cutoff early and a distraction from Ford early. Sabian gets the tag and keeps working Omega over. I will say, Kenny Omega is not my favorite guy. He's not a guy that I've gotten into. Of course, to be fair, I haven't seen the majority of his Japanese work. I do plan to go back on New Japan World at some point when there's 30 hours in a day and watch some of his old New Japan work to see if my opinion changes. But he's good to very good, but not standout. But I will say here he does a fantastic job of selling. Page tags in, and Page and Omega work together well. There's a point in the match somewhere here where Jim Ross talks about, or maybe it's Shivani, one of the announcers talks about the fact that they are getting along better, the champions are, and I like that. I like that they're acknowledging that the story may be changing between the two or something like that. I still say Tony Schiavone, by far, leaps, bounds, and cartwheels, is the best announcer in pro wrestling today. And I know this probably isn't going to be a popular opinion, but Jim Ross, to me, is showing his, I don't know that age is the right word, but the decades he's been in the business is starting to slowly pass him by for some segments. He's still good 80% of the time, but there's just moments where he's disconnected. I noticed that throughout the program this evening, and I've been noticing it the past couple of months. Comment below if you agree or if you vehemently disagree. Would love your opinion on that. So then Paige is in. Sabian takes the referee. Ford tries a head scissors off the top, but Paige blocks. The referee ejects her, and Havoc hits Paige and Omega with a wrench. Where he got a wrench, I assume from under the ring, but where he got it, we don't know. Havoc works over Paige, and Omega and Sabian both tag their respective partners. Omega hits Sabian and Havoc with Rana's, and then Omega hits a backstabber on Sabian for a near fall. And Paige follows up with a standing shooting star press for a near fall. That looks really, really good. Ultimately, if we're talking about just action in a match, this isn't bad. But again, for me, a match should be somewhere close to 50-50 action and story, and I'm still not feeling a story compelling enough that this should be opening a Dynamite show. A dark show? Maybe. Midpoint in a AEW Dynamite show? Sure, why not if they've built it a little better, but it just seems out of place here. Havoc to the apron with a saw. Paige kicks him to the floor and hits a clothesline on Sabian for a near fall. The near falls here are well done. I will give everybody involved credit for that. Sabian and Havoc use a series of quick tags, and Omega is laid out. Havoc sent Paige into the barricade. Sabian hits a double stomp for a near fall. Havoc hits a Impaler DDT for same. Then we move to Sabian hitting Omega with a Poison Rana. Omega comes back with a Snapdragon Suplex on Havoc and a V-trigger on Sabian. Now, here's, again, one of my challenges. The there's too many finishes that aren't used as finishes in AEW as a whole. This is a company-wide problem. I know there are going to be people that say, well, it's just the way wrestling is these days. But they have so much momentum, they could dial it back, still have phenomenal matches, and have each guy and lady have, two moves that are uniquely theirs, that when they hit them, it's more likely than not, 80% of the time at least, over, and they don't do that. Anyway, Paige and Omega hit a last call buckshot lariat, V-trigger combo, and Paige pins Havoc. Interesting that Havoc is the one to take the fall, especially when they were pushing him as a really violent guy not 2 or 3 months ago, who was, a big deal, and now he's taking a fall here. They play a small snippet of a Tully Blanchard promo, which had aired on social media to try and get Shawn Spears jacked up and ready to go. Blanchard told Spears he has just what he needs to take him to the next level. And Spears is handed a black glove. So is Shawn Spears the partial soul reincarnate of Michael Jackson? I don't get what a black glove is going to do here. Anyway. So then we go to Brian Cage defeating Shawn Dean. I really like Dean and wish that Cage was not obliterating him. There were other people that Brian Cage could obliterate. I mean, it's a good squash. And Cage wins with a drill claw after a series of suplexes. And, Taz then cuts a promo, says he's frustrated because Moxley has been disrespectful. Taz says Moxley needs to get his head straight and take Cage seriously because he isn't a joke. And Taz passes the torch of the beat me if you can survive if I let you onto Cage, which I don't particularly care for that. That's Taz's catchphrase. And unless they're actually going to go, you know what, do an angle with it. I'm going to give you this. I'm going to... this is what I used to say when I was ECW champion. This is what I used to say when I got ready to take on Triple H on SmackDown. This is the phrase that fired me up. And you're so good, I'm going to give it to you. Otherwise, it just looks like Brian Cage isn't special enough for his own catchphrase. And that just doesn't make sense to my brain. Anyway, so Moxley comes out, climbs in the ring, says that... he is going to enjoy making violence with Brian Cage. Moxley and Cage say they're both different than anyone else in AEW. And so Cage is a machine. Moxley is only human. Moxley says he can be beaten, but it would take Cage all night long. Well, that's a problem. Because I don't think in his current condition, Brian Cage could go all night long. So that could create some mischief. Moxley tells Cage he's swimming in a different breed of shark, and to remember the next time he brings that up on TV. Not a bad segment. I mean, to me, Brian Cage just comes in at the pay-per-view. I would give him a month worth of squash wins like he had here tonight before you move him on to Moxley. To me, that indicates that either they hadn't planned who to put Moxley with post the pay-per-view with Brody Lee, or they aren't as good at transitions as they need to be an episodic television program consistently in terms of one challenger and then another one's being built. So Alex Marvez, who I don't understand why he's still there, approaches Lance Archer in a junkyard. Archer beats up a masked man, and the whole thing is caught on a television camera. This is not a good thing. Archer stops and tells him that one loss means nothing. He says he's not here to be a spot monkey. Now, curious question. How many casual fans do you think knows what a spot monkey is? How many people do you think went on Google and looked up spot monkey, and they expected to see a spotted monkey? It's just a case of using insider terminology that doesn't make sense. He does say that he's here because everybody dies. Well, that's kind of an awkward catchphrase during a pandemic now, isn't it? Um, Not a bad promo. It's just a little clunky. Jake Roberts apologizes to Mr. Announcer of the Day. So Matt Hardy approaches Private Party. Hey, that rhymed. Hardy and Party. At the backstage bar, Hardy asks Quinn how he's doing and how his knee's doing. He says he's not going to miss any time. Hardy says he enjoys the match with Private Party last week, and that Private Party reminds him of the Hardy Boys. One of the Private Party says, or I think it was Isaiah, says that they could be the Hardy Party. Hardy bumps into Sammy Guevara. Hardy says that they're cool and that there's no trouble between the two of them. I didn't really like this segment for a couple of reasons. I like the idea of Matt Hardy being a mentor, but unless Jeff's coming in and they can do Private Party versus the Hardys, referencing the Hardys when Jeff is not here, Jeff is not going to be here for the foreseeable future, just feels like building up something you can't pay off. Secondarily, being that Sammy Guevara is a growing talent and a guy who really, if he wanted to, could probably put most of the talent down, at least from a storyline perspective, it's really interesting to see that Matt Hardy is kind of giving him a pass on all the violence that's been between things. So we see a hype video for the main event. Flyer Fest is announced as July 1st and July 8th. And then, yeah, I mean, the announcers didn't seem to know when this was earlier in the show, but the commercial does. That's not particularly a good thing. Cabana and Jericho's up next. Jericho comes out with Hager and Guevara. Guevara sings Jericho's song in a way that proves, at least for character purposes, he can't carry a tune into a handled bucket. The camera cuts to QT Marshall and Allie kind of being close and whatnot in the crowd. So I really got to thinking, this is one of those matches that I didn't know I wanted to see until it was announced. And I was like, hey, cool, it'd be cool to see Cabana and Jericho. And it did not disappoint. Cabana hits an Asai moonsault in the early moments of the match, then climbs the ropes. And Hager knocks Cabana off the ropes, and Jericho takes control right before they go to the commercial. Cabana hits a flying apple after they come back, but not before Jericho crouches himself on the second turnbuckle. Also flip-flop and fly. Tribute to Dusty in here. Cabana hits the flying apple as mentioned before, and then he hits a splash off the second rope for a near fall. Jericho hits a back elbow, misses a lion salt. Cabana went into the Superman pin, but Jericho reversed it into the walls of Jericho. This was really cool. I mean, when you think about, in wrestling, counters and counter holds, we've almost seen everything. This was something that I didn't expect to see, and it was cool the way it was done. Rope break is forced between these two, and then Jericho argues with the referee and says Cabana tapped out. Cabana gets a couple near falls, Cabana springboards off the second rope right into the Judas effect. Jericho gets the pinfall. Jericho cuts promo. He's addressing the audience, and he says he needs to be shown respect. Calls out Tyson, swears at Tyson, says that he's going to do to Tyson what he did to Cabana. Somehow I don't think so. I don't think Tyson's that athletic. Anyway, so he said everyone wants to see Jericho versus Tyson. This much is true. And they did show at some point during the program some comments from ESPN and I think one other news outlet, that acknowledges the Tyson thing. So they got some publicity. Probably not nearly as much as they want, but with the state of the world, that's not terribly surprising. He says he wants to taste Tyson's blood and shove Tyson's head up his own backside. Tasting his blood is a little weird. Are we going with a vampire deal here? Just sometimes people say weird things. Anyway, Jericho says he's not waiting for next week, the next pay-per-view, or next Christmas. He's calling out Tyson now, and instead we get Orange Cassidy, which I know that Cassidy is a polarizing figure, but this was awesome in the sense that, like, if Tyson's not in the building or we're playing it like he isn't, I really wish that this had a crowd, because I think a crowd would have popped even bigger than the planned folks could have. Cassidy tucks Jericho's own hands inside Jericho's belt as if they were pockets. This is funny. Harper swings, or Hager rather, swings and misses. And then Jericho misses. Cassidy bails out. And then they basically tease that sooner or later, Cassidy and Jericho are going to go at it again. So they air a commercial for the second time with the wrong airtime for Flyer Fest. They do a video package from earlier tonight. I guess they really don't have enough time. Britt Baker hype video where she's working out to get back in shape from her wheelchair. Rebel Dr. Sampson and Tony Schiavone cheered her on. Baker probably working about as hard as a third grader works on cutting paper. Nyla Rose out defeating Big Swole. Swole uses a couple of really basic moves, an abdominal stretch, headlocks, and the like. Swole low bridges Rose, and Rose goes over the top to the floor. Rose takes control of the match and rams Swole into the ring frame. Good use of the ring there. Anyway, commercial break. Rose is stretching her opponent upon the return. Swole makes a comeback with headbutts and uppercuts and a springboard cutter for a near fall. Rose hits a spear for a near fall and gets a victory roll for a near fall of her own. Spinebuster by Rose gets the win, so the former champion back to winning matches here, which I suppose is a good thing if you like that sort of thing. Schiavone interviews Swole post-match, and she said she needed some time off, even though she lost. She says it's good to be back. Britt Baker yells, wants to get up in Swole's face until Swole grabs a chair and goes after her with a chair. So a person in a wheelchair is about to get attacked with a chair. Rebel pulls Britt Baker out of the way just in time. Probably setting up a match between these two somewhere down the road. In a short interview with Darby Allin, Tony said that he's known Darby for a couple of years, and Darby's one of the toughest people he knows. He's not cleared to wrestle after the injury at hands of Brian Cage at the pay-per-view. Schiavone asked Darby if he thought Taz's attempts in the weeks leading up to Double or Nothing had something to do with the attack. Allin says that life is one big joke, but he'll get the last laugh. Yeah, I didn't care for this as much as Darby's other promos. It needed at least another line. Life is another big joke because life is just a big joke, and they needed more here for this to have worked. So Shivani sits down with what's now known as FDR, and Dax says that FDR stands for their lifestyle. I don't quite get that, but anyway, Cash says it can stand for whatever they want or need it to. Dax says it's for the word revolution right now since they've come to ACW at the pinnacle of tag team wrestling. They put over the various teams. One of them says that they want to get even with the Lucha Brothers and teach them about tag team wrestling, which I think that'll be an interesting clash of styles, honestly. One of them also says that Omega and Page aren't a real team, but that they are, and that'll make winning the championships easier. He then says that, or Tony then says that the Bucks weren't mentioned. Why is this? Dax says he's tired of hearing about the Young Bucks, a tag team of the decade, and that they even mentioned Dave Meltzer, which if you're not a Meltzer fan, obviously, pro wrestling reporter, historian for the last 30 plus years, but not a guy that you would expect to get mentioned on a national television program. So kind of interesting there. Says a lot about who the program caters to, if that's where they're going. Anyway, Cash says this isn't a dream match for them, and he wants to punch the Bucks in the mouth and have a fight with them. You know, they bleep out that Shivani thinks that FDR stands for, well, Duck the Revival. Anyway, so Butcher and Blade barge into the interview set, and they do a pull-apart brawl. I've never gotten Butcher and Blade, still don't get them now. Anyway, so Butcher and Blade versus FDR next week. Cabana and Guevara, easy to say, sounds like a law firm. Next week, Mark Quinn versus the winner of the TNT Championship match in the main event. And Santana and Ortiz and Jake Hager versus Best Friends and Orange Cassidy. Announced for next week's Dynamite. What's interesting to me is they're not even done with the show, and I already care about most of the matches on next week's show. That just shows that they really do understand character development if they can make me care on week-to-week episodic. Gee, I don't want to miss this. Even though there weren't matches I was expecting, I still care enough to want to watch next week. Anyway, they have Moxley in action on Doc next week, which I think is interesting. Getting more eyes on the internet property is a good idea. Marvez interviews Cabana. Cabana says he proves he's belong, but he didn't get it done tonight. Brody Lee enters and says it's not the loss that matters, it's how you rebound from it. Says he can help Cabana with that. Cabana kind of teases that he might join the Dark Order, which I think would be interesting. Having some comedy in the Dark Order could be fun. And then your main event is next. They mentioned that next week, the winner of the match defends against Rey Fenix. The problem with that is they already said Mark Quinn earlier in the program. But that can also be a problem because this is a taped show and maybe voiceover work is done at a different time. Anyway, this match is really good. Cody is my favorite wrestler in the world probably right now, at least in North America right now. Jungle Boy does really cool stuff, including a step-up Rana. Cody goes after his leg early. Cody continues with this, going for the figure four. Rope break forced. Um, Cody misses a disaster kick. Jungle Boy hits a springboard DDT for a near fall, and then gets another near fall in a matter of seconds. Jungle Boy hits a suicide dive to the outside. Cody then tosses him over the barricade. As we go to commercial, Cody hits a headbutt on the floor, and he rams his head into a wall when he tries for a second headbutt. And so MJF is running his mouth at Jungle Boy as a member of the audience. Cody's bleeding. Now, this makes me sad. I like when Cody... This will sound weird, but I like when Cody bleeds because it adds drama. But Cody bleeds too often, so the drama is reducing. Anyway, so Jungle Boy hits a drop kick and gets a couple of near falls off that. Cody hits a pump kick. Cody gets hit with a lariat and another near fall. I mean, Jungle Boy's really looking good here. He's taking the majority of the match, which is exactly what should happen. This reminds me of the old WCW TV Championship type stuff. Jungle Boy goes to the top rope. Cody cuts him off with a delayed superplex for near fall. I remember when superplexes were finished. I think they should still be. Cody teases using the weight belt, but decides against it. And then both guys are on the top rope. They stumble and bumble and go through the timekeeper's table at ringside. Cody tries a sunset flip, and Jungle Boy does the sit out for the near fall. The end of the match sees a swinging DDT attempt. Cody blocks it, goes to the crossroads, gets the pin. This crossroads was brutal looking. It looked like it was heavy and cut him through it. Anyway, so Shivani says Cody will defend against Mark Quinn next week. Dustin and Brandy out to the ring after the match to check on Cody. Marco and Luchasaurus come out to check on Jungle Boy. Both guys embrace. The show goes off the air with the Rhodes brothers shaking hands. Overall, a really decent program and something worth watching. It had its clunkiness, but I think every weekly episodic television show does, even in non-wrestling genres. So, overall, what did you think? Comment below, and subscribe, like, all that good stuff. In any event, till next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Till next time, everybody.